Hi, my name is Ram and welcome back to the series where we build real web application with React, Redux and Node.js. So it was a long time since we saw each other. Last time it was in the previous year, so Happy New Year everyone. I wish you a very successful 2018. Okay, so just get to speed with the series. I've decided for this particular episode, for this coding session, to go a little bit in a different way. Instead of continuing with our form, we're going to learn about Redux Saga. Just because I used it a lot in last month and it's pretty cool. So it's a great alternative for thunks, and we'll see today how to use it and what benefits it brings, and we'll just convert our signup form from using thunk actions to sagas. Okay, sounds good. So let's just have a big picture of what is this saga thing. So we will not dive deep into the functional background of it, just to get the idea how we can use it. So imagine that you have this Redux application, that's the separate stuff, and the sagas are just running in parallel process. So it's like in an infinite loop, and it listens to the particular actions. So it's connected to our Redux application with actions. So when Redux stuff just dispatches some action and one of the saga listens to it and reacts to it. So it makes some side effects, and when it's done, it will dispatch another action back to our Redux application. So this way, Redux app stays pure. We do not have any kind of special actions there. We just dispatch action for our saga. For example, something like request. And that's it. That we've done our job, and we're just waiting for another action to be dispatched and react to it. So that makes Redux app very nice and easy to understand. Another good thing about sagas, they are very testable. It's very easy to test them, which is really awesome as well. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do today. So let's get down to the code. And I had this fun exchange with Marco. Marco, hey, thank you very much if you're watching. We were talking about via emails, we were talking about the Vim and why I don't use it. And I just said that, hey, I don't see actual benefit in using Vim anymore. And then I launched it and I remembered my setup, and I had a rush of nostalgia, and now I'm using Vim. So just for this episode, let's use Vim and we'll see how it turns out. And if you like it, if you like Vim stuff, just let me know in the comments below, and I will continue to use it in this series. Okay, so let's open Vim. Nice. First of all, we need to install Redux Saga. So let's do it with yarn add Redux Saga. You can do it in Vim, you can do it with like a parallel process, but when I install something, I prefer to wait when it's done and just meditate a little bit. So the Redux Saga is at the version 0.16 at the time of the recording. So now we need to go to index.js file. So here, what are we going to do? We're going to create middleware. We're going to register this middleware in our Redux store, and then we're going to run this infinite loop like a Saga process. So for that, let's go up here and let's import create Saga middleware from Redux Saga. Okay, so now here, before doing something, we need to create this middleware. So here I'm going to define constant Saga middleware equals to create Saga middleware. Just like that. So now we have the middleware that we can register, and let's register it right before the thunk here. So we'll have Saga middleware registered, and after we've done that, we're gonna run it. So we'll do Saga middleware dot run, and this function takes one argument. That's the root Saga. So we'll do root Saga. I just call it root Saga. You can name it anything you like. So now we need to import it. So we'll do root Saga, we import it from root Saga, and of course we need to create file root saga.js. Okay, so what is Saga? Basically, Saga is the generator function. Generator, I think it's generator. I always, for some reason, I confuse them with decorators, but this is the generator function. So we're gonna export function, and to create generator function, you need to place this asterisk after the function keyword, and then the name of the function is Redux Saga, and it takes some parameters, in our case none, and then we'll have the body of the function, of the generator. So two things to note about generators. We're not going to dive into details about them, but the thing that you need to know is, first of all, you can't use arrow functions, so you need to have this function keyword. And second, what it gives us is yield keyword, and basically yield keyword makes asynchronous code synchronous, like it looks like synchronous. It's very similar to async and await. So here we'll have, for example, yield, and we do something asynchronous right here, and execution will wait for it to finish or to throw an error before continuing next, right? So this way we can make the request, wait for the response, and dispatch actions into the Redux store, back into the Redux store, without handling promises or callbacks or something like that. Okay, so now we have this Redux Saga. Cool. We need, of course, to set up the sagas themselves. So we're going to change the sign-up process to use sagas instead of the thunks. So let's go to Actions Users. And here we go. Here is our sign-up action. That's the thunk action. It takes some data. It makes API request, sign up, and passes this user data to it. And if everything's go well, we have the user model, user data. We save the token into the local storage, and then we dispatch this user logged in action. So we're going to do the same thing, basically. But it will be different. Because right now, if we go to sign up form, so here is in our on submit, you can see this is where we making this props submit function, and we assume that it returns promise, and that's why we can catch something, right? Because we assume, that's our convention, that it will return promise. And that's my convention. It works pretty good with small to medium projects. It could also work pretty good in a large project, but in a big team, you will have all to share this convention. And that's not a good convention, I must, confess, because it leaks all the way from the thunk action. So where does this promise comes from? It comes from the thunk action. So if I go back to the thunk action here, you can see that here I'm returned the result of API user signup function, which if you go to API signup right here, it returns axios.post, and that returns promise. So that's all the way from there. It goes to our component. Form component, which is arguably not really great. In our signup form here, we will not be able to catch anything. We will just dispatch regular, pure Redux action. So I'm going to just delete it from here, like this. So that actually screws up our error handling from the server, but we will fix it. Now here we have this submit, and this submit, we expect it as the property, as the prop, and we get it from sign up page component. So here is our submit that we taken this sign up, and so basically the sign up page had not only the layout responsibility, but also it redirected. But now redirection is actually the side effect. If we think about it, we just dispatching some actions, and one of the side effects will be the redirection. So, and we will not have this promise anymore, right? Because this sign up will be the pure function, nothing more. So we need to delete everything from here. Basically what we're doing here, we do not need to have history. We do not need to connect this anymore. So I'm going to just delete it as well, like this. So I do not need to have a connect function. And basically, I just convert the signup page into the functional component. So I'm going to have constant signup page equals to the function that returns some data. Let's remove this stuff from here. Oops. And I'm just going to delete everything from here. And let's format this out. Nice. So now this sign up form doesn't take the submit from here. You just have just the sign up form, just like that. So this way we can connect the sign up form itself to the store. So let's go back to sign up form. So now it still needs to have the submit function, but now that's going to be the pure action. So we need to connect it. So let's import connect, and that's here. I'm just going to use the connect here. For map state to props, I will just set up null for now. We're going to change it. And here I will have the submit. That will be the create user request. So we'll have the create user request action. And I will create user request from actions users. Okay, so this create user request is just the pure action. We're gonna create it in a moment, and we just map it to the submit property, submit prop in our signup form, which is right here. But what it is, create user request is just the function action. So if we go to actions users, and here let's create export const create user request. It takes some data, or let's say user, or data, I'm not sure, we'll see. And now the type is create user request, and we pass down user here. So now we need to add create user request. Of course, we need to go to types, and let's export const create user request, create user request. Okay. So just the pure function, no thunk action anymore here, right? So we just dispatching this action, but our app will not, react in any way to that. Instead, we will create right now the saga that will listen to it. And when this action dispatches, it will do its synchronous side effect stuff. Okay. So let's go back to root saga, sorry. So root saga. So here, it uses a little bit different parlay. So we'll have, instead of dispatch and instead of listen, we'll have taken put. So we taken, that means that we've taken something from our Redux application and we put in something into there. So we will use yield and then take every or take latest. So in our case, we just take the latest action that was dispatched, this particular action, and then we will match it, bind it to the saga that we want. So that's going to be create user request, and that's going to be create user saga. So now we need to import create user request from, that's the root saga, so I assume that's types. And we need to import create user saga from, let's say, sagas, users sagas. Okay. So now let's create sagas folder, and inside of it we'll have users sagas.js. And here we're gonna export function if I learn how to type, export function. This again, it's a saga, so it's a generator function. Create user saga, and it takes action basically. And after that, we can make something out of it. So this action is basically, if we go back to users here, this one. So this object, we'll take this object, the create user type, and in action we'll have the user object. So, and we can do something with it. So for example, we could make API request. So we'll do yield, not yield, we'll do constant user equals to yield. It just means wait for it to finish, to resolve in some way, in successful way or in error way. And then we'll do the call effect. That just, you could just call, invoke the functions right away, but with call helper, with call effect, it will make much more easier to test in the future. It's just a way to do that in the sagas. So if you want to invoke the function, you just call it and you pass down the function itself. We're gonna have API users sign up, and then you provide arguments to this function. In our case, that's action.user. Okay. So that will make the request to the server and get back the user details, and we save it in this constant user. So after that, we want to dispatch action back to our Redux application. So we do it with yield put effect, and we say what we want to put. So we'll have the action here. I will say create user success, and we pass down user to it. Okay, so that's basically almost the same as dispatch create user success action. And that's just, again, the convention: create user success, create user failure, and create user request. So basically for every synchronous action, every synchronous stuff that you want to do, you will have these three actions. So you're requesting stuff and you either have success or failure. Sometimes you will have more. Okay, other thing that we want to do, if everything's go well, what we want to do? We want to have the local storage stuff. So if we go back again to users here in actions, here we have the local storage, and then we dispatch another thing. We dispatch user logged in. So instead of this, user logged in basically. We can use it right now instead of create user success. Okay, so let's just copy this stuff. Local storage stuff. Let's paste it in here. So we're using the same thing, user.token. So we set in local storage, and instead of this create user success, we're going to use the user logged in action. Because for us, that's actually what we wanted to dispatch right now. We could change it later to some kind of other name. So now we need to input a lot of stuff, right? So let's go back to Redux Saga first. So here we have this, and that. We have the take latest. So we need to import take latest. And we import it from Redux Saga /effects. Okay, so now let's go back here and let's import stuff from here as well. So first of all, we need to have call and put from Redux Saga /effects. And next we'll need to import the user logged in from actions auth. What else do we have here? And we need to have API from API. I think that's it. I'm not sure about API.user, so let's go to API. API user singular. Okay, like this. Okay, so basically what's going on? We dispatching right here in Redux Saga. We dispatching the create user request in our form. That's what we dispatch. Now this Redux Saga listens to it. It takes the latest create user request, and then it calls create user Saga in its own loop, in the parallel process, in the parallel universe. So now here what we do, we just call the API user signup, pass down the action user data into it, waiting for it to resolve, and when it's resolved, it will get back user data to us, and we just set the local storage, and then we dispatch user logged in action. So let's have a look in the browser, how far we went. Okay, so in the Redux Saga, export default. Okay, so let's go back to Redux Saga, and instead of just export function, it should be export default function. So, okay, that's good. In signup page, we have the prop type. So let's go to signup page right away and delete the prop types because we are not using prop types anymore here. And now let's try to create something. So some test at test.com, test. And when we sign up, Okay, something's going on. We have the loading screen that because something's going on. So if we go to Redux, you'll see here that we actually have the create user request. Nothing happens here, but then we have the user logged in, and you can see that it actually was dispatched, and we have the email, we have the confirmed username and token, everything's good. That's nice. If we go to the network, you will see that we making the request somewhere here. If I find it, can I find it? Oh yeah, of course, users here. Here we're making the request, and we're getting the response with this user created for us. That's nice. So the problem with this loading screen is that here in Redux, you can see that we overridden the loaded. We just deleted it from this state. So here in state with user, there are no loaded, and that means that it's false, and that's why we're seeing this stuff here. So that's not good. We need to fix it, and we can fix it by going to the reducers user, and here it is. So when we have the user logged in, we just have the action user. We do not do anything with loaded. So, but basically we need to do something with loaded. So let's surround it with brackets, and let's set loaded to true. I messed something up. Yeah, of course. We need to spread this object like this. Okay. So that should actually fix it. So if we just let's log out and let's try it again, test2 at test.com, test2 test, sign up, and now we're good. Now we're good. We even have been redirected to the dashboard page, and that happens not because we're doing something special about the redirection, but that happens because we have these routes that checks for user. If user is signed in, then we redirect to the dashboard because we do not want to allow signed in users to create new accounts, for example. So we even do not need to actually redirect anywhere. That's nice bonus to have. But there is a problem. So let's log out and let's try to create the same account like this. And of course, nothing happens. If you can see here, we make the user request and we do not have the successful resolution because we have the errors from our server. But we do not display anything because right now we have no promises and there is no way we can get this data from our request. Okay, so now we need to fix it. So first of all, now if we go to the form, you will see that here in our submit, yes, we do not use promises anymore. So we need to store errors in our Redux state. So there is no other way, right? We need to tell our form that, hey, you have errors from the server. That's the first thing. So let's create special reducer for form errors, and then we will populate it with errors depending on the sagas result. So let's go to root reducer, and let's here create another one, and we call it, say, form errors. Now let's add it here as well, form errors, and now we need to create it in reducers, form errors.js. So now here we'll have the reducer, pretty standard one, just an object. And inside of this object, we'll have the key, we'll have the form identifier, and the value will be the object of errors. Good. So now, when something goes wrong, that's the correct way to say it, we want to populate it with errors. But first, we need to catch when something goes wrong. So if you go back to our user sagas, here's what we're doing here, but that's only happens when it's okay, if everything's fine. But when something goes wrong, it throws an error. So here in yield, when something goes wrong with this call stuff, it will throw an error, and we need to catch it. And to do that, we use try. And just like that. And after that, we'll have the catch, and we're catching the error. And inside of this catch, we'll just dispatch another action. We just put, for example, create user failure. failure action, and we pass down error.response.data.errors, like we did with promises, because right now here we're catching the error and we know that this is the throw of the promise. That's why we can do that. Of course, you could actually differentiate between different errors. For example, you could have another error, server-side error, just the 500, or maybe network error. So here's where you can catch them, and depending on the type of error, dispatch different action to your application. In our case, we want just to cover the sign-up errors from server. So now we need to import this create user failure from actions users. Okay, so now let's go to users actions here and let's create another one. So there's gonna be our failure. Here we will have errors, and I'm gonna just change it to here as well. And here we have failure. And now right here, we're going to have create user failure. Now we need to go back to types and let's copy and paste it. And I'm just going to use this as failure. Oops. Done. So now we have just the pure action that will be dispatched by Saga, and it will have errors inside of it. Nice. So now let's go back to root reducer, not the root reducer, but the form errors reducer. And here let's import the create a user failure from types. And here we're gonna case on this create failure. And we're gonna return the state just to keep all of other actions here. Other forms errors here, and then we'll have the signup form, and the errors will be action.errors, just like that. And also another thing that we need to do is to import here the request as well. So we'll have the request, and we go into case request also, but in this case we're gonna return state, but for signup form we'll just return empty object. So this way, when we have the request, we just clear all errors, and then if we get back errors, so we just populate it back. That's good. So let's have a look. Let's have a look right here. Test. Sign up. Nothing happens. But if you go to Redux, you can see here that hey, nothing happens. What the heck? Okay. So and you can see that we haven't actually dispatched the create user failure. So let's go back to editor. So what's the problem? Let's go to the user sagas. Here we catch an error, and yeah, of course. Oh man, that's embarrassing. Yield put. Okay, so let's try it again. So we'll have test at test.com, test, sign up, and here we go. So here we have the create user failure, and you can see that in our state we have the sign up with errors from our server, which is exactly what we want. But of course we do not render them on the form itself. So now we need a way to take this data from the state and use it in our form component. So we already connected our form. So now we can just create map state to props and use it. So let's go to form. Not this form, but this form. And here, instead of now, let me center this out here, we'll have map state to props. And let's define it right here. Map state to props. And what we want to have server errors. And that's going to be the state form errors sign up. So basically, now in the props, we have server errors. Now we can use them. And we could use them directly. So for example, here somewhere where we have errors email, we'll also have another one for server errors email, like this props server errors email. But also we'll need to duplicate here as well, add some other conditionals, which is not really great. Instead of that, we're gonna merge or even replace the errors in component state with errors from the server. And to do that, we'll use component did mount. So this component will receive props. I do not remember. So component will receive props. And it takes next props. And now we can do something with it. So what we're going to do, we're going to set state. And for errors, we're going to set next props server errors. Okay, so let's have a look in the browser. So if we try to do the test at test.com, test, sign up, and here we go. It works. That's cool. Quite unexpected to work it the first time. So now if I, for example, make this test 2, it still will not work, but test 3 will work. And you can see that we clear the errors and then they come back, which is exactly what we want. So that's nice. And if, for example, for some reason we'll have something like invalid email, we'll still have invalid email errors because they're not really connected in this regard. Works like a charm. Okay, so let's take a break for a moment, just for 5 minutes. I'm gonna drink some tea or water, and in the second part of the session, we're just going to create the fetch current user details by sagas instead of thunks, and also we'll see how to create redirection. So right now we have this redirection out of the box because of the routes, but that's not the case all the time. So what we're going to do, we're going to use history object both in our sagas and in our React router, so we could redirect as a side effect. So thank you very much for your time, and see you in the next one.